Imagine uncovering a parchment. I mean, actually finding this thing, carbonized by a funerary pyre, just this fragile relic that, well, it forces us to rewrite centuries of intellectual history.
It really does. I mean, this text, it's so significant, so utterly transformative. People have called it unquestionably the most important textual discovery of the 20th century for early Greek thought. That's not hyperbole.
No, not at all. It's more than just, a remarkable archaeological find.
Indeed, yeah. This is a singular artifact that throws, a seismic wrench into one of our most cherished, long-held narratives about how Western thought, how philosophy itself actually evolved. It's a genuine game changer, even looking at its charred, fragmented state.
Right. Now, before we really dive into this incredible discovery, just a quick but crucial note. It's about how we approach these historical deep dives here at AI History of Western Philosophy.
Important context.
Yeah. So while we strive to, draw connections, synthesize vast amounts of information, and maybe generate some new possibilities for thought, we absolutely have to acknowledge that AI-generated content, well, sometimes it can confabulate. It might present ideas as fact when they're more like interpretations or syntheses.
That's a fair point. We're exploring, not dictating.
Exactly. So, though our subject is philosophy, we are not philosophers ourselves. We're not here to provide definitive philosophical decrees. Our mission, really, beyond pointing you to the original sources, which is vital, is to experiment with philosophy as material.
To sort of play with the ideas, see where they lead.
Precisely. To explore its textures and implications, and hopefully to spark your own critical engagement with these really profound ideas.
Okay, disclaimer handled. Let's get to the good stuff.
Right. So with that context in mind, today on AI History of Western Philosophy, we're unearthing Europe's oldest surviving manuscript, the Derveni Papyrus.
Found back in 1962.
Yeah, discovered deep within a Macedonian nobleman's tomb near modern Thessaloniki. And this late 5th century BCE text, it isn't just old. It's like this living testament that fundamentally challenges a foundational, almost sacred idea in the history of thought.
It really asks us to question that whole supposed linear, almost inevitable transition from mythos to logos in ancient Greece.
Talk about that transition first. What was the standard story?
Well, for generations, the dominant story was pretty simple, maybe too neat. It was this idea that ancient Greeks, almost in a flash of genius, dramatically abandoned supernatural storytelling and divine explanations. That's the mythos.
Right. Homer, Hesiod, the gods doing things.
Exactly. And they supposedly swapped all that out in favor of rational, naturalistic, evidence-based inquiry.
The logos, birth of reason, the Greek miracle, all that.
Pretty much. But the Derveni Papyrus, it doesn't just complicate this picture. It really asks us to rethink that entire progression. It suggests something far more nuanced, more dynamic, and frankly, a lot more interesting.
Like a conversation, maybe. Not just a replacement.
Exactly. A profound negotiation, a dialogue, rather than just the clean, decisive break where reason wins and myth loses.
Okay, so our mission in this particular deep dive is to unpack why this papyrus isn't merely, an archaeological marvel or some dusty curiosity for specialists.
Right. Why should you care about this burnt scroll?
Precisely. It's a profound philosophical statement that forces us to reconsider the very bedrock of Western intellectual history. We'll explore how it completely reconfigures our understanding of myth, reason, and that often romanticized birth of philosophy itself.
So what does this all mean for you, the curious learner, when you think about the very foundations of Western thought?
Yeah, this little charred scroll, preserved ironically by very fire meant to destroy it, is about to maybe reshape everything we thought we knew. Okay, so to really get our heads around the seismic shift this papyrus represents, we first need to properly understand the story it disrupts, that bedrock narrative that shaped how we saw the birth of Western thought for centuries.
The traditional picture.
Yeah. Let's start by grounding ourselves in that traditional distinction. What exactly do we mean by mythos? It's got to be more than just a casual story or fable, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's a crucial distinction to make right off the bat. For anyone familiar with the intellectual landscape of ancient Greece, mythos, that's mythos, it immediately conjures images of, Homer and Hesiod's rich tapestry, anthropomorphic gods, epic battles, gods meddling everywhere.
Zeus throwing thunderbolts, Poseidon stirring up storms.
Exactly. But let's dig a little deeper. Mythos isn't just a simple story, it's more like a foundational worldview. It's a narrative form characterized by relying on supernatural agencies, often with deities who have very human-like traits and emotions, and they engage in actions that totally defy natural laws.
So Zeus's thunderbolts aren't just describing a storm, they are the explanation.
Precisely. They embody divine will and power. And these weren't just like bedtime stories. They were profound vessels for cultural values, for moral lessons, for societal cohesion. They were passed down through generations, forming the very fabric of understanding.
Like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey.
Prime examples. With their intricate divine genealogies, tales of gods meddling constantly in human affairs. Or think of Hesiod's theogony, which literally maps out the birth and lineage of the gods. These are mythos in its full, culturally pervasive glory.
So they provided a whole framework for understanding existence.
A comprehensive framework, yeah. Explaining everything from why the seasons change to, human destiny and the origins of the cosmos itself. It was the shared reality.
Okay. And then in what was traditionally conceived as its stark opposite, we have logos, echoes. How is this term understood and championed in this conventional view?
Right. So logos is presented as the counterpoint. It represents a rational, reasoned, systematic account of things. It's analytical. It seeks impersonal, inherent, natural causes, universal laws, maybe material substrates for reality.
Through observation, evidence, deduction.
Exactly. All of the above. Where mythos sees divine will or maybe arbitrary, often personal, actions by gods, logos seeks a systematic, critical understanding of the cosmos based on principles that are accessible to human reason.
So it's about challenging tradition. Using evidence.
Yes, challenging tradition with evidence-based explanations, moving beyond the personal and the supernatural to the universal and the natural. The early Ionian pre-Socratics are often held up as the heroes of this logos.
Like Thales and his water.
Exactly like Thales, who famously proposed water as the fundamental substance, the arch of all things. Or Anaximander, with his boundless, undefined cosmos, the apeiron. They weren't just telling a story about origins, they were looking for the underlying principles of the universe.
Rational explanations, not just divine whims.
Right. They sought a coherent, internally consistent explanation of the world, one ideally free from the caprice of the gods. They wanted a system.
Okay, so that's the basic distinction. Now, for a long time, the scholarly consensus painted this really dramatic picture, a revolutionary great transition from mythos to logos. Tell us more about how this narrative took hold. What was its appeal? Why was it so dominant?
Well, this powerful account, and it really was powerful, was championed most influentially by scholars like Wilhelm Nestle back in the early 20th century. He basically envisioned this clear, almost inevitable progression. Like history was marching towards reason.
Teleological, you mean? Like it had a goal?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It charted this historical path from, say, the divine genealogies and cosmic origins in Hesiod's theogony straight to the materialist inquiries and abstract principles of figures like Thales, Anaximander, Heraclitus.
Heroes of reason.
They were definitely cast as intellectual heroes, yeah. Initiating a Greek Enlightenment that supposedly replaced arbitrary, superstitious myth with the ordered, predictable world of reason.
So it simplified things quite a bit.
Hugely. It simplified a truly complex historical reality, framing it as this decisive victory for reason over what was often characterized, pretty dismissively actually, as just superstition or primitive thinking.
And the appeal.
Well, the appeal lay in its clarity, its sense of progress. It also, frankly, conveniently justified the European Enlightenment's own self-perception, as having finally cast off the shackles of religious dogma.
Ah, so it created a neat origin story for Western thought.
Exactly. It gave us a very clean, straightforward, almost heroic birth story for Western philosophy and science. It became a kind of foundational myth of its own, ironically.
But this clean, binary story, this intellectual revolution, it's faced some serious scrutiny in recent decades, hasn't it? People started saying, hang on, it probably wasn't quite that simple.
Oh, absolutely. The idea of a sudden revolutionary great transition has been heavily, heavily critiqued for oversimplifying the sheer intellectual ferment of ancient Greece.
So what's the newer thinking?
Well, in recent decades, historians of philosophy, classicists, they've argued that the transition was far more gradual. It was a complex evolution where logos often grew out of mythos rather than simply kicking it to the curb.
So they weren't always enemies.
Not at all. The relationship was far more intertwined, complementary, symbiotic even, than a simple zero-sum game. Even Aristotle, who you could argue is one of the greatest champions of logos and systematic reasoning.
Right, the master of logic.
Yeah, even he recognized a shared explanatory impulse between myth and philosophy. He saw both, in their own ways, as trying to make sense of the world, trying to provide coherent accounts of phenomena driven by wonder.
So who are some scholars who push back against the old narrative?
People like W.K.C. Guthrie, Glenn Most.
Yeah.
They've meticulously documented how mythical modes of thought, symbolic language, even ritual practices, they persisted. They influenced and often intersected with highly rational frameworks, even within the philosophical schools themselves. It wasn't an either-or situation.
Okay, so the argument then is that this traditional mythos logos narrative itself became a kind of modern myth of origins for Western rationalism. What does that imply exactly?
Yeah. Well, it implies that this whole great transition story served an ideological purpose, perhaps unconsciously sometimes. It helped establish that heroic birth story for philosophy and science we mentioned.
Suggesting a clean break from a quote-unquote less rational past.
Precisely. By presenting this tidy narrative of reason triumphing over superstition, it maybe oversimplified the messy reality of intellectual development and cultural persistence. It created a convenient, maybe slightly self-congratulatory framework for understanding the origins of Western thought.
Reinforcing a bias towards a linear view of history.
Yeah, subtly reinforcing that bias and maybe overlooking the constant back and forth, the cross-pollination, the internal negotiations that were clearly happening within the ancient Greek mind. It wasn't a simple switch being flipped.
Okay, so bringing it back to our papyrus, this charred fragment of ancient wisdom, where does it fit into this revised, more nuanced understanding? How does it actively challenge that old narrative?
The Derveni Papyrus. It acts as this powerful, almost conclusive corrective. Its very existence, and especially its content, just dismantle that simplistic replacement model.
How so?
Well, here we have a detailed, really sophisticated philosophical commentary. I mean, this is Logos hard at work, meticulously analyzing and interpreting an ancient Orphic poem about the birth of the gods. That poem is quintessential mythos.
And the commentary isn't just debunking it.
Not at all. Its explicit goal isn't to dismiss or debunk the myth. It's actually trying to show that at a deeper hidden level, the hyponoia, the two, myth and philosophy, are not in conflict, but are, in essence, one and the same thing.
Wow. So it's showing a synthesis.
A profound negotiation, a synthesis, a creative re-encoding. It's not about the triumph of one over the other. It pushes you, the curious learner, way beyond a simple replacement model.
Forcing us to see a much more intricate interaction.
Yeah. Exactly. A dynamic interplay between traditional narratives and emerging rational thought. This is ancient philosophy, not as a clean break, but as this fascinating wrestling match, maybe a delicate dance between old and new ideas.
And the Derveni author, this anonymous intellectual, they had some pretty remarkable tools for that wrestling match, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Cutting-edge tools for the time.
Okay, so to pull off this incredible synthesis, this really audacious reconciliation of myth and reason, our anonymous author wasn't just making things up as they went along.
No, not at all. They were wielding the most advanced philosophical toolkit available in their day, deploying cutting-edge cosmological theories and really sophisticated interpretive methods.
And you mentioned earlier, at the heart of that toolkit was a groundbreaking philosophy of Anaxagoras of Clazomia.
Absolutely. Anaxagoras, he lives roughly 500 to 428 BCE, was just a pivotal figure. He's the one who really brought that tradition of Ionian inquiry, with its focus on naturalistic explanations for the cosmos instead of just gods doing things.
He brought that to Athens.
Right, into Athens, yeah. And his system, particularly his revolutionary concept of nous, or mind, was just uniquely suited for what the Derveni author was trying to do, reinterpreting these ancient religious texts through a really rigorous philosophical lens.
Anaxagoras gave him the framework.
He provided a framework that could explain complex cosmic phenomena without resorting to anthropomorphic gods, but it still offered this powerful organizing principle. It wasn't just random atoms bumping around.
Okay, so let's unpack this central concept then. What is nous? It's N-O-U-S in Anaxagoras' system, and why was it so revolutionary at the time?
Right. So for Anaxagoras, nous is way more than just like human intelligence. It's described as an unmixed, utterly distinct, self-ruling, and all-knowing cosmic intelligence.
Unmixed, meaning it's separate from matter.
Exactly. He famously described it as the finest and purest of all things, possessing total knowledge and the greatest power. It stands apart from all the other material ingredients of the cosmos.
And what was the cosmos like before nous got involved?
According to Anaxagoras, before nous intervened, the cosmos was just this primordial, undifferentiated, completely motionless mixture of everything. Chaos, basically.
And nous is the thing that starts it all.
It's the singular motive cause, yeah, the prime mover. It initiates motion in this chaos to bring order and structure to the universe. This concept was truly radical for its time.
Why radical?
Because it provided this transcendent yet somehow immanent, singular, intelligent principle. This gave the Derveni author a perfect philosophical analog to equate with a supreme deity like Zeus.
So he could reinterpret polytheism as monotheism, sort of.
Functionally monotheistic or maybe pantheistic, yeah.
Yeah.
It moved beyond just simple material causes or even the kind of blind forces suggested by some earlier pre-Socratics. It introduced an intelligent, organizing force right at the heart of cosmic generation.
Like a philosophical master key.
That's a great way to put it. It could unlock and re-encode these ancient religious stories, giving them a whole new rational kind of currency for the time.
Okay, that's Nous. But what about the physical world itself? How did Anaxagoras conceptualize matter and change? Especially considering Parmenides had thrown down that gauntlet, basically saying change was impossible.
Right, that's a critical point. Anaxagoras' physics was, in large part, a really sophisticated response to Parmenides of Elea. Parmenides had argued, pretty compellingly, that what is cannot come from what is not. Therefore, true generation or destruction is logically impossible.
Which is a major problem if you want to explain, well, anything that happens.
Exactly. It's a huge philosophical impasse. And Anaxagoras cleverly countered this with 3 key principles about matter. First, no becoming or passing away.
Meaning things don't really start or stop existing?
Correct. What we perceive as birth or death, creation or destruction, is merely the sig crisis. That's SYGKRSIS, the mixing and diacrisis, DIAKRSIS, the separation of pre-existing eternal ingredients. Everything always was and always will be. Things just rearrange themselves.
So it's not just semantics, it's a fundamental shift.
It's fundamental. It allows for flux and change without requiring something to literally come into being from absolute nothing, which was the Parmenidean problem.
Okay, principle 1. Mixing and separation, not creation and destruction. What's 2?
Second, he proposed everything in everything. This is a bit counterintuitive. It means that every basic substance, think water, fire, flesh, bone, air, earth, whatever the fundamental seeds are, is present in every object.
Wait, so this table has fire in it? And bone?
According to Anaxagoras, yes, tiny traces of everything are in everything else. An object's identity, why the table is a table and not, say, a rock, is determined by the preponderance of its constituent ingredients. The dominant stuff makes it what it appears to be.
Okay, like baking a cake, you mentioned that before.
Yeah, the cake analogy works well. You have flour, eggs, sugar, butter, all are present in the final cake, right? But their mixture in specific dominant proportions makes it a cake, not just a pile of raw ingredients. The cake still contains tiny bits of everything, just dominated by cakeness.
Why was this important?
It was profound because it allowed for the appearance of new qualities or substances without actual creation ex nihilo. It directly addressed Parmenides by explaining apparent change as just rearrangement and shifts in dominance.
And the third principle.
Finally, Anaxagoras held to infinite divisibility. There's no smallest or largest part of any substance. You can always divide it further, theoretically, forever. This ensured that the primordial mixture always had enough of everything mixed in everywhere to allow for any possible manifestation later on.
Wow, okay, that's a complex and pretty elegant system for the material world. So how did this transcendent Nous actually create the cosmos we see from this initial undifferentiated soup of everything and everything?
Anaxagoras envisioned this initial state, as we said, as an undifferentiated, motionless mixture of all these infinitely divisible ingredients, just chaos. Then Nous, this cosmic mind, initiates a rotary motion like a vortex, a great cosmic swirl in just a small part of this massive primordial mass.
And this swirl spreads.
It expands outwards, yeah. And this rotation causes the ingredients to separate out basically by density. The lighter, rarer elements like fiery ether, they move out to the periphery, the edges. While the denser, heavier elements like earth and water, they gravitate towards the center.
There you get structure emerging from chaos.
Exactly. It's a truly powerful vision of cosmic order arising, not from random chance, not from purely mechanical forces, but from an intelligent, organizing force that sets the universe in motion and guides its structuring. It's a universe that's dynamic, constantly changing through mixture and separation, yet fundamentally ordered by mind.
Okay, now this is where the Derveni author's genius really starts to come into focus. He's got this cutting-edge physics as his foundation, but he still faces this huge challenge, bridging the gap between this, frankly, materialist cosmology and an ancient deeply entrenched poem about anthropomorphic gods doing very unphysical things.
Right, the Orphic theogony. How do you map one onto the other?
Exactly. What interpretive tools did he deploy to make these two seemingly disparate worlds connect? How did he build that bridge?
Well, he deployed these sophisticated hermeneutic techniques, basically, methods of interpretation that were really gaining traction during the sophistic enlightenment of the 5th century BCE. The first, and perhaps the most crucial tool, was allegory.
Allegory. So he explicitly claims that Orpheus, the ancient poet who supposedly wrote the poem, didn't actually mean his poem literally, that it was all some kind of coded message.
Exactly that. The Derveni author boldly asserts that Orpheus wrote in riddles. The Greek is enigmatodes. Einig todes. And this wasn't just a casual remark, it was a deliberate philosophical move. It's like a direct instruction to his audience on how to read this sacred text.
Setting up a framework from the start.
Precisely. By asserting that Orpheus's entire work was an allegory from the first word to the last, the Derveni author immediately establishes that the literal meaning, the surface narrative of divine drama, is just a veil. It's obscuring a deeper physical and philosophical truth hidden underneath.
This hidden meaning, the hyponoia.
Yes, that search for the hyponoia, hu enaioi, the hidden subtext. Now, this method wasn't entirely brand new. Figures like Theagenes of Rhegium had used it way back in the 6th century BCE, mainly to defend Homer's sometimes dodgy depictions of the gods from moral criticism.
Homer didn't mean the guys were really like that. It's an allegory for something else?
Pretty much. But for our Derveni author, allegory becomes the absolute key. It unlocks the true philosophical meaning that he believes is concealed beneath the false, or let's say misleading, surface of the myth. It's a way of elevating the myth.
Giving it a new kind of truth, making it respectable.
Exactly, giving it a new kind of authority, making it palatable and intellectually respectable for a more rational age. He's essentially transforming ancient poetry into veiled science, or at least veiled physics.
And to bolster these allegorical claims, he gets quite creative with language itself, right? You mentioned etymology before. He uses word origins as a form of proof.
He does, and it's truly fascinating to watch his intellectual acrobatics here. He uses etymological analysis, looking at the supposed roots of words, specifically of divine names, as linguistic clues to their hidden physical meaning.
Like the Cronus example.
That's the most striking one, yeah. His connection of Cronus, the mythological father of Zeus who castrated his own father Uranus. He connects that name to the Greek verb to strike, kruin, K-R-O-I-N.
So Cronus isn't a person, he's an action.
He reinterprets the deity not as a mythical figure engaging in a violent act, but as the striking mind, kruin nuth, that causes the cosmic particles, the everything and everything, to collide, to strike against each other and aggregate during that initial formation phase of the universe, the start of the vortex.
That's quite a leap.
It is. This playful yet profoundly serious use of language to uncover deeper hidden truths, it echoes the methods of some sophists, and even Socrates, actually. Think Plato's Cratylus, where Socrates plays with etymologies to explore the correctness of names.
So it's a way of finding proof for his interpretation within the myth's own words.
Exactly. Suggesting the original poet, Orpheus, intended this deeper meaning all along, encoded in the names themselves. It lent this air of authenticity, of recovering an ancient wisdom to his quite radical reinterpretations.
Okay, let's connect this back to the bigger picture. We have Anaxagoras' core principle, no becoming or passing away. Things just mix and separate. But the Orphic poem is all about the birth of gods, the literal generation of deities one after another. That seems like a fundamental tension.
It absolutely is a direct contradiction on the surface.
So how did the Derveni author, armed with his allegory and etymology, actually reconcile that philosophical paradox? How did he square that circle?
This is precisely where the author's real genius lies, I think. And it's a critical point of synthesis in his whole project. He brilliantly resolves this tension by reframing divine birth, not as creation ex nihilo, not from nothing, but as the emergence of a new cosmic order.
Emergence through what?
Through the mere separation, diacharesis, and mixing, pseudograsis of that pre-existing matter we talked about. So the succession of gods in the poem Uranus, then Cronus, then Zeus, it transforms. It's no longer a literal genealogical drama.
It becomes phases.
Exactly. A sequence of distinct phases in the cosmic ordering process, all orchestrated ultimately by the single eternal Nous. The philosophy itself, Anaxagoras' denial of literal generation, actually necessitated the allegorical method he wanted to employ.
He couldn't take the births literally if he believed in Anaxagoras.
Precisely. He had to interpret their births as cosmic events, as shifts in the configuration of matter, all guided by Nous. This profound connection between his philosophical foundation, Anaxagoras, and his interpretive method, allegory, is crucial. One served and justified the other.
Creating a really intellectually robust, if maybe slightly audacious, system.
Audacious for sure, but cohesive. So with these sophisticated tools in hand, Anaxagoras' physics, allegory, etymology, the Derveni author embarks on this remarkable re-encoding of ancient sacred texts. He turns myth into physics.
And in doing so, he gives us this incredible glimpse into a dramatically different intellectual landscape than we might have imagined. Okay, so at the very core of this re-encoding, this huge project to turn ancient myth into basically cutting-edge physics for the time. What's the central identification our author makes? What's the big reveal that anchors his whole system of interpretation?
The cornerstone, the absolute bedrock of his reinterpretation, is the really audacious identification of the supreme god, Zeus, with the Anaxagorian cosmic mind, Nous.
Zeus is Nous.
Zeus is Nous, but he doesn't stop there. He further equates this principle with error in Greek. He seems to be drawing on thinkers like Diogenes of Apollonia, who was another contemporary philosopher who saw air as the dominant, intelligent, all-pervading cosmic substance.
Why is that move so audacious?
Well, think about it. It transforms a polytheistic narrative, a whole pantheon of distinct deities with personalities and stories, into essentially a functional monotheism, or maybe even pantheism, where one intelligent principle underlies everything.
So it aligns ancient religion with the latest philosophy.
Directly aligns it. It makes the old religion compatible with, even identical to, the most advanced contemporary philosophical thought. And the other gods in the Orphic poem, they aren't just ignored or eliminated.
What happens to them?
They become aspects or phases or maybe just alternative names for this single, intelligent, divine principle, Nous Zeus, that pervades, orders, and governs the entire universe.
So you're no longer worshiping Zeus as like this guy on Mount Olympus throwing thunderbolts.
Exactly. You're acknowledging Zeus as the fundamental organizing intelligence, the Nous that underpins the entire cosmos. It gives the old god a completely new, scientifically respectable identity for that era.
Okay, and this isn't just a general sweeping idea, right? He systematically maps the mythical succession of divine rulers, the whole family tree of the gods in the poem, onto specific phases of cosmic formation. He gets into the details.
Oh, precisely. The author's genius, or maybe his meticulousness, lies in this systematic approach. The entire divine lineage becomes this elaborate allegory for the universe's development. It's like a detailed roadmap of cosmic evolution, not just a godly soap opera.
He's showing us Orpheus was basically a proto-physicist speaking in code.
That's exactly the claim. That Orpheus, far from being just a simple storyteller, was actually revealing deep physical truths, just, in riddles.
So let's walk through that mapping. Uranus, the primordial sky god in the myth. He isn't just a god in this system, he's a phase, a cosmic state.
Exactly right. Uranus's reign represents the initial state of the cosmos. It's that Anaxagorian primordial mixture before Ness initiated any motion or separation.
How does he connect Uranus, the god, to this state?
The Derveni author connects Uranus, maybe playing on the sound and concept, to a determining mind and sonic. The Greek is arizon nous, ou arison nous. This isn't the active nous that stirs the vortex later. It's more like a nous that contains the universe's plan, its blueprint, its conceptual framework, but in an unmoving pre-active state.
Like potential energy?
Kind of like that, yeah. It perfectly aligns with Anaxagoras' description of the cosmos as that undifferentiated, motionless mixture before Nous began its active work. Uranus embodies the universe in its potential, unmoving form before any dynamic ordering starts.
Okay. Then comes Cronus, Uranus' son, who famously overthrows and castrates his father in the myth. That's a pretty dramatic, violent act. How does that translate into calm, rational, cosmic physics?
Well, as we touched upon earlier with the etymology, Cronus gets reinterpreted as the striking mind Kruon Nous. Kroo on Nous. His mythological overthrow of Uranus, that whole violent family drama, it becomes an allegory.
An allegory for what?
For Nous initiating the cosmic vortex. That action, Cronus striking, causes the primordial ingredients, all that everything in Anaxagoras talked about, to strike against each other, to collide, to begin the process of separation, diacrisis, and mixing, syncresis.
So Cronus's violent act is transformed into the trigger for the universe's dynamic evolution.
Exactly. The beginning of the great cosmic swirl that brings order out of chaos. It's the moment the blueprint, held potentially by Uranus Nous, is actually set into motion by Cronus Nous.
Which naturally leads us to Zeus, the supreme god, king of Olympus, who in turn overthrows Cronus in the myth. What does his reign represent in this Anaxagorean re-encoding?
Zeus's reign represents the final, current, and ongoing phase of cosmic organization. He is the all-encompassing, intelligent nous that actively governs the ordered world, the world of the things that are now, the cosmos we actually inhabit and perceive.
So his kingship means cosmic order.
His mythical supremacy, his role as king of the gods, signifies the ultimate triumph of intelligent order in the physical universe. It represents the stable, organized cosmos that is maintained by the continuous power and intelligence of Nous. He's not just a ruler sitting on a throne, he's the omnipresent, intelligent principle maintaining cosmic harmony, ensuring the processes of mixture and separation continue according to this rational plan.
Wow. Okay, it gets even more granular than that, doesn't it? The author takes some of the most vivid, maybe even bizarre mythological events from the Orphic poem and reinterprets them as specific physical processes within this Anaxagorean framework.
Indeed, yeah. Even the most, let's say, visceral or seemingly fantastical myths are given these profound physical meanings. The Derveni author really demonstrates his interpretive skill, his determination to make it all fit.
Okay, let's take one of the most striking images in the Orphic poem, Zeus, swallowing Uranus's severed phallus. In the myth, this allows him to become a new origin point, to reabsorb the essence of creation. How on earth does the Derveni author tackle that image through a philosophical lens? It seems pretty challenging.
It is challenging, and it's a truly audacious interpretive move on his part. The Derveni author interprets this really potent, visceral image as an allegory.
An allegory for?
An allegory for Nous as Zeus, reassimilating all the separated matter, all the things that have emerged, in order to intelligently recreate and reorder the world according to its rational plan.
So swallowing the phallus is like Nous taking everything back in to reorganize it.
Exactly. It maps precisely onto the Anaxagorean idea that Nous possesses total knowledge of and control over all mixtures and separations. It's not some grotesque act of cannibalism or symbolic usurpation. It's a metaphor for cosmic intelligence reordering and reintegrating the universe.
Like a continuous cycle of cosmic management.
You could put it that way. A cycle of intelligent cosmic management run by Zeus. It signifies the all-encompassing nature of Nous as the ultimate source and controller of all material configurations. It makes philosophical sense within his Anaxagorean framework.
Okay, another one. What about Zeus consulting the primordial goddess Night, Nyx, Nyx? In the poem, he seeks knowledge and power from her ancient sanctuary. How is that interpreted? Surely that looks like two gods interacting.
Right, on the surface it does. The poem states Zeus gains power and wisdom by consulting Night Nyx, but the commentator, our Derveni author, interprets this not as a literal divine interaction between two distinct deities, an older goddess imparting wisdom to a younger god.
So what is it then?
Instead, it's seen as a metaphor for Nous, as Zeus, delving deeper into its own inherent wisdom, increasing its own understanding, or perhaps actualizing its imminent, pre-existing plan for the cosmos.
So is Nous basically thinking to itself, consulting its own database?
Pretty much. It's Nous reflecting on its own knowledge, consulting its own inner workings, rather than seeking external advice from some other entity. Night, in this allegorical sense, becomes a symbol for the deep, inherent, perhaps pre-cosmic wisdom contained within the cosmic mind itself.
Right. Okay, so for you, our listener, to really grasp the systematic ingenuity of this author, let's try and summarize this truly elaborate and cohesive system he's constructed. It's like he built a translation key.
Yeah, we can definitely create a kind of comparative lexicon, a table of correspondences to really grasp the author's systematic approach. Imagine this translation.
Okay, hit me. Uranus.
Uranus. He represents the initial state of Nous as that determining mind, or rise anew, before any physical separation occurs. He embodies the original, undifferentiated mixture. Think of it as the universe as pure potential, a blueprint awaiting activation.
Got it. Cronus.
Cronus, he is the striking mind, Kuranu, that causes cosmic particles to collide and aggregate. This represents Nu initiating the cosmic rotation, the great vortex that sets the universe in dynamic motion. The activator.
Makes sense. Zeus.
Zeus. He embodies the supreme, all-pervading mind, Nu and air, that intelligently governs the current world order, the things that are now. This signifies the ongoing ordering power of Nous as the cosmic architect maintaining universal harmony, the sustainer.
Okay, and the phallus swallowing.
Zeus swallowing the phallus. This is interpreted as Nu reassimilating all existing matter to recreate or reorder the world according to its rational plan. It represents the total control and knowledge of Nu over all mixtures and separations, cosmic management.
And finally, the whole idea of divine birth itself, which is central to the Orphic poem.
Divine birth. This is fundamentally reinterpreted. It's not creation ex nihilo. It's the emergence of a new cosmic phase or order, simply through the separation and mixing of pre-existing matter. This perfectly embodies Anaxagoras' fundamental principle of no becoming, only mixture and separation.
Wow. This systematic mapping, it's definitely not just intellectual gymnastics, is it?
Yeah.
It really shows the depth of the Derveni author's intellectual project.
Absolutely. It demonstrates a mind seriously at work, refusing to see a necessary dichotomy between ancient tradition and what was then modern scientific inquiry.
It reveals a whole new way of thinking about the intellectual ferment of the 5th century BCE,
Yeah.
making a period far more vibrant and complex than maybe we initially imagined. Okay, so this entire incredibly intricate project just raises this really important question for us. Why? Why did the Derveni author go to such extraordinary lengths to reconcile this ancient religious text, the Orphic poem, with what was then cutting-edge physics? What was his ultimate motivation in undertaking such an ambitious and, frankly, philosophically daring interpretation?
That's the million drachma question, isn't it? And scholarly debate on the author's ultimate motivation, well, it continues to offer fascinating and often quite contrasting perspectives. We can broadly categorize them into two main camps, or maybe tendencies.
Okay, what's the first camp?
The first is what we might call the apologetic view. This perspective suggests the author was actually a deeply pious figure, maybe an Orphic priest himself, or at least an initiate deeply committed to the Orphic mysteries.
So his motivation would be religious.
Yes. His motivation in this reading would be primarily to defend traditional religion, specifically Orphism, from the relentless critiques coming from the burgeoning rationalist movement, people questioning the old myths.
So he wasn't trying to destroy the myths, but to save it.
Exactly. To save the tradition by demonstrating that Orpheus, the supposed author of the poem, was in fact not just the poet, but the first and greatest physicist, revealing profound physical allegories hidden within these sacred texts.
Making Orphism intellectually respectable for a skeptical age.
Precisely. Proving that the old wisdom already contained the new science, maybe even anticipated it. It's a defense strategy.
Okay, that's the apologetic view. What's the opposing take?
Well, an opposing, let's call it the sophistic view, sees the author in a very different light altogether. This perspective portrays him more as a professional intellectual, maybe even what we might consider an atheist in the ancient sense, meaning someone who rejected the traditional anthropomorphic gods, not necessarily disbelief in any divinity at all.
So from this viewpoint, the allegory isn't defense, it's
paradoxically a deconstructive act. He's using the immense cultural authority of Orpheus as a kind of Trojan horse.
How so?
Ostensibly, he's honoring the ancient poet, right? Look how wise Orpheus was. But in reality, according to this view, he's using that authority to promote his own naturalistic and Anaxagorian worldview. It's a display of immense intellectual virtuosity, sure, but it simultaneously strips the myth of its traditional religious content, replacing it entirely with a purely physical explanation.
So it's a subtle form of intellectual subversion, using myth to kill myth.
Kind of, yeah. Using the revered old text to usher in the new way of thinking. Both interpretations, the pious defender and the sophisticated subverter, offer compelling, though obviously very different, insights into the complex motivations that could drive intellectuals in this really dynamic period. We can't know for sure, of course.
Right. But regardless of his specific motive, whether it was pious defense or sophisticated subversion, our Derveni author clearly wasn't alone in trying to grapple with this tension between myth and reason back in the 5th century BCE.
No, absolutely not. He was part of a much larger conversation.
So what other strategies were thinkers employing at the time? It seems like rationalism itself wasn't some single unified front marching in lockstep.
You're absolutely right. The 5th century BCE was this period of intense intellectual ferment, a really vibrant marketplace of ideas. And rationalism definitely wasn't a monolithic movement. We see several quite distinct approaches to engaging with myth, showing a broad spectrum of thought, not just one single convergent path.
Okay, so give us some examples. Who represents a more direct challenge to traditional myth? Someone who was arguing for more of a clean break.
Well, Xenophanes of Colophon is a great example of that. He offered a much more direct, even moralistic critique. He famously attacked Homer and Hesiod precisely for depicting gods as immoral, anthropomorphic beings, gods who engaged in theft, adultery, deceit.
Things Xenophanes found unworthy of divinity.
Utterly unworthy. So he proposed instead a single, non-anthropomorphic, all-seeing, all-hearing, all-thinking God. He was essentially seeking to replace traditional mythology entirely with a philosophically respectable monotheistic theology. His strategy was one of outright rejection and substitution, based on moral and theological grounds. Get rid of the old gods, here's a better one.
Okay, that's rejection. What about a more reductionist approach? Someone trying to explain away the gods as just human constructs or misunderstandings.
That would be someone like the sophist Prodicus of Ceos. He offered this fascinating naturalistic theory for the actual origin of religion. He argued that early humans, basically out of gratitude and admiration, began to worship things that were useful to them.
Useful things, like what?
Like the sun, the moon, rivers, bread, wine, things they benefited from directly. These beneficial natural phenomena or human inventions were then, over time, deified.
So the gods are just personified useful stuff.
Pretty much. This was a strategy of explaining away the gods as primitive human projections onto nature, reducing divine phenomena to natural utility. It sought to debunk traditional religious beliefs rather than reinterpret them like the Derveni author or replace them like Xenophanes.
Right. Then we have Plato. He's famously critical of poets, worrying they can corrupt citizens and distort truth. But he still used myths himself, didn't he? That seems like a bit of a contradiction.
It does seem like one on the surface, but it's actually a really sophisticated move on Plato's part. Despite his strong critiques of the traditional poets for their potential negative effects, Plato absolutely did not abandon myth altogether. Instead, he became a master myth maker himself.
Inventing his own myths.
Exactly. Inventing his own powerful narratives, like the myth of in the Republic, which describes the soul's journey after death, or the myth of the metals, which he uses to justify the class structure of his ideal state.
So why did he use myths if he was critical of them?
Well, for Plato, myth became this powerful tool for philosophical pedagogy. It was a way to teach complex doctrines, maybe to persuade non-philosophers who weren't up for rigorous dialectic, and sometimes, perhaps, to articulate truths that lay beyond the limits of purely rational dialectical argument.
So it's a strategy of philosophical appropriation and invention.
Precisely. Using myth as a deliberate philosophical instrument to convey deeper truths that might otherwise be inaccessible or harder to grasp. He's harnessing its power for his own philosophical ends.
Okay, so bringing it back to the Derveni author, with his specific method of allegorical reinterpretation based on Anaxagoras, he seems to be carving out his own quite distinct path. Different from Xenophanes' rejection, Prodicus' debunking, or even Plato's philosophical reinvention. He's found a truly unique third way.
He absolutely charts a distinct course. We could call it rationalizing preservation. Think about the differences. Unlike Xenophanes, he doesn't reject the traditional Orphic text on moral grounds. He accepts its authority.
Unlike Prodicus,
He doesn't explain it away as some primitive error or a human projection. He insists it contains deep truth.
And unlike Plato.
And crucially, unlike Plato, he doesn't invent a new myth to replace or supplement the old one. Instead, he takes an existing authoritative religious text, the Orphic poem, and argues very forcefully that he is simply revealing its original intended meaning.
Recovering the truth that was always there.
Exactly. He co-opts the new authority of logos, of philosophical reasoning, not to destroy mythos, but actually to re-authorize it on new philosophical terms, making it profoundly relevant and respectable for a rationalizing age.
Which in itself shows just how powerful that mythos, that tradition still was, right? That it prompted such a sophisticated intellectual effort to preserve it.
Absolutely. It shows the enduring cultural power of mythos. The deep reverence for these ancient traditions was still incredibly strong, even amongst intellectuals exploring radical new ideas. The intellectual landscape, as we said, was truly this competitive marketplace of ideas.
Thinkers were devising all sorts of strategies to reconcile or confront the old and the new.
Exactly. And this adverse landscape really challenges you, the listener, to see ancient thought not as some simple linear progression from A to B, but as this dynamic, evolving conversation full of surprising turns, dead ends, and really ingenious solutions like the one in the Derveni Papyrus.
So after all this, what's the lasting legacy of this charred papyrus? This thing that burned for centuries in a tomb but ultimately illuminated so much for us. So when you look at it, even in its charred and fragmented state, having miraculously survived the flames of that ancient funerary pyre, the Derveni Papyrus really does offer a remarkably complete refutation of that simple, linear story of logos just triumphing over mythos.
It really does. It's a powerful testament to an intellectual world that was far more complex, far more creative, and certainly much more contested than we often imagine, or than that old narrative allowed for.
And its intricate project, using Anaxagorian physics to interpret an Orphic theogony, it just demonstrates this relationship of profound synthesis, doesn't it? Not outright replacement.
Exactly. And the commentary really reveals how structurally essential Anaxagorian physics was to the whole project. Remember, Anaxagoras denied shrew generation and destruction. That philosophical commitment almost necessitated the allegorical reading the author advanced. The physics itself called for this ingenious interpretive method. One couldn't work without the other in his system.
So it's much more than just Europe's oldest surviving book, which is amazing in itself. In a very real sense, you could almost see it as a kind of manifesto, couldn't you? A manifesto for a different kind of enlightenment.
That's a great way to put it. An enlightenment that doesn't simply discard the past or declare it obsolete and irrelevant.
Yeah, it proves that the rise of rationalism, at least in this context in ancient Greece, did not automatically necessitate the death of myth or religious tradition.
Quite the contrary. It shows that logos could provide the very tools needed to give mythos a new, maybe even more profound life, re-encoding its ancient narratives for a world that had started to demand rational explanations for pretty much everything.
Including its gods and its cosmic origins.
Exactly. This papyrus stands as this enduring testament to an intellectual world far more complex, creative, and contested than that traditional narrative of a simple triumph of reason has really allowed us to see for a long time.
It's a powerful reminder, maybe, that human intellect has always sought to connect disparate spheres of knowledge, hasn't it? To find unity beneath apparent contradiction.
That drive seems persistent.
Which I think forces us to ask a question about our own time. In our own era, just flooded with information, new technologies, constantly evolving scientific understanding. Are we maybe too quick to dismiss old narratives? Or ancient traditions, or even just cultural practices that don't immediately seem rational by our current standards?
Are we discarding wisdom along with outdated frameworks?
Possibly. And how might we, perhaps like the Derveni author, discover new layers of meaning in traditions or ideas we thought we already understood or had moved beyond? Using the most advanced philosophical hardware of our time, whether that's neuroscience, quantum physics, complexity theory, or even the very AI that helps us explore these historical ideas.
It's a fascinating thought. Consider this. If the ancients, like the Derveni author, could see cutting-edge physics hidden within sacred poetry, what hidden philosophical truths, or maybe just valuable perspectives, might we be overlooking today?
Overlooking where?
In the stories we tell ourselves, in the vast data sets we generate, maybe even in the complex algorithms that are increasingly shaping our world and our perceptions, what new forms of mythos are emerging right now, maybe disguised as something else? And how might we apply a new logos, a new critical reason to understand and maybe even re-encode them for the future?
That is definitely something to think about. Finding the physics in the poetry of our own time.